Welcome everybody to our session on favor fast feedback in everything from me, Austin Chadwick, and Luis Martinez. A little bit about us. My name is Austin Chadwick. I've been in software engineering about 15 years, and it's kind of funny that the 5-year segments in my career were almost like different parts of ways of doing software methodology. So my first 5 years was in like pure waterfall, very traditional. And then for 5 years, I did very stereotypical Scrum. And then for the last 3 to 4 years or so, I've been doing extreme programming and mob programming and just absolutely loving it and excited to share with you today. How about you, Luis?
So I've been doing software programming, developing for the last 8 years. So my paradigms include like Scrum, Scrumban, Waterfall, and then Agile XP here at Hunter. So I'm stoked to be here with Austin to provide a glimpse of what favoring fast feedback can help people achieve. So
nice, right on, right on. And so what we kind of want to share today is what I like to call a proverb. So it's kind of going back to classic ancient wisdom literature and proverbs, and it's basically the idea of something that's generally true that definitely has exceptions, but it's short, pithy, easy to remember. And so when you're in the middle of a situation, you can, it can come to mind and you can apply it and try it out and see if it works. And so the proverb that we want to kind of try on today is favor fast feedback. So if you look at your entire developer experience, software development lifecycle, and think about what does favoring fast feedback lead to in several different areas. So Luis and I are going to walk through a couple of several of those areas today. And so why would you want to think, maybe more abstractly, why would this potentially be a proverb? And one reason that comes to mind for me is kind of thinking back to usability engineering. You can see the book here in the bottom left corner. And kind of stemming from the ideas in this book, there was like kind of these 3 key feedback times, so, if you think about a product, and let's think of something really simple like a door, right? And so let's think about the first time. So you turn the knob on the door and the door opens and allows you to open it in 100 milliseconds or less. Your brain, your mind is like, sees the cause and effect of your hand moving, opening the door, and it feels pretty good, right? For using that product. But now let's try on 1 second. So you turn the door knob and then a second later it opens. You can still sense the cause and effect, but it feels a little off, maybe a little weird, but yeah, maybe acceptable. And now imagine 10 seconds. So you turn the doorknob and the door doesn't open until 10 seconds later. If it were me, I start, jiggling the door, turning the doorknob several times. By the time that the door opens, I'm not sure if it was me who opened it or someone else. So the cause and effect and the context is basically lost. And so if you look about your developer experience, if you look at the software process and software development as a product and say, hey, what does favoring fast feedback look like? And is it similar to the door example? And so the first area we'll jump into and maybe do some comparisons, A versus B, kind of like an eye exam, is automated tests. So take it away, Luis.
So favoring fast feedback in tests. So some of us might know this pain, tests that are measured in minutes rather than seconds or worse. So a lot can happen in that amount of time. So you might get an email or a text message halfway through test execution. Things just tend to happen. So with these longer test times, you can break your flow. You can lose track of the ball and have difficulties picking up where you left off. It can be tricky. So having faster feedback lets you kind of trace things down while the problem-solving mindset is still fresh. So you can maintain your flow rather than breaking it. So
nice, yeah. And so you take that same idea and you go to not just automated tests, but code in general. And so believe it or not, earlier in my career, I did code editing in text editors, just like, Notepad basically. And, and so I'm breaking naming conventions. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. And then I, write the code, push the code. And then later I get back feedback from others or from a pipeline, static analysis tool or something that, hey, I'm not following a naming convention. Now you compare that software development I've done more with like some of these rich IDE development environments where as you're writing the code, it's giving you that feedback instantaneously on, hey, this looks like a naming convention you're breaking. Do you want me to fix it for you? And so in my experience in code, getting that feedback right then and there quickly, it just eliminates the waste of waiting, and it feels good, to fix it right away, where fixing something from a while back doesn't feel as good and doesn't deliver value as quickly. And so, yeah, so favor fast feedback in code. How about for product features, Luis?
So for product features, without fast feedback, you can be stuck waiting for a third party, whether that be a product owner, an early release tester, or even another development team. So this can lead to many of the common pitfalls like overproduction of code and emails. When you favor fast feedback here, it means slicing things as small as you can. So potentially getting feedback within the same day, while the understanding among the team is the most fresh. So.
Nice. Yeah. And then kind of taking the proverb and applying it to pipelines. Two experiences distinctly come to mind for me. So this is continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines. So it's something that takes a set of code from ideation, and then it moves it through tests, and then it deploys it into production type of thing. So I've been in CI/CD pipelines where that is several hours and even days. And I just remember the confusion that would happen. So you have multiple people or multiple mobs or multiple pairs writing code and pushing code. And then let's say it breaks, but it breaks a day later. And so the cause and effect of what broke it, was it my commit? Was it your commit? Was it this? Was it that? Is really lost a lot. And so kind of going back to Luis's point on favoring fast tests, that has a downstream effect on your pipeline as well, because the slower your tests are, it makes the pipeline slower, right? And so I just remember there being a lot of confusion, and it led to ignoring red pipelines and all sorts of anti-patterns. And then I've also been more recently in a mob programming environment where the pipeline was lightning fast. So we would write code and then push it to the pipeline, and very, very soon we would know if we broke something. And it was trivial. It was simple. It was like, well, obviously it was what we just did that broke it. And so I think pipelines is a rich area to where fast feedback can really help. And now we're going to kind of turn to non-code things. So how does fast feedback apply to learning, Luis?
So learning is a skill that takes repetition. So the better you can limit the scope of your learning, the faster you can evaluate your progress or even apply it. So when you don't have fast feedback, it greatly increases the time for you to put a skill to good use. When you do have fast feedback, you can kind of react to your learning and like applying it to your application, potentially adjust what you need to do, even switching over to an alternative. So it's much like choosing to learn a riff than learning a whole song. And a teacher really helps if you have someone there as well to kind of help guide you along.
Yeah, and it's a great point. So if there's someone guiding you learning, they can give you that feedback each step along the way, which is why like tutoring, or as you're talking about with music, it's a great way to learn, because you get that fast feedback. So if you take that same aspect of learning and apply it to your developer experience for continuous integration, and I have maybe two or three different sets of experiences here. And so thinking about improvement, continuous improvement, I have some examples that come to mind where going back to my waterfall days, where you would do a whole project that took a year, and the only time that you talked about as a team, what could we do better, was after the project was over, after a year of work. And so, so that was definitely not a fast feedback loop. I don't remember any improvements, being made, at least that I can recall. And then I've also been in environments where it's better. So it's like a continuous improvement loop of about 2 weeks. And while that was better, and it was awesome to be involved where we'd retrospect after a 2-week sprint or something like that, what would happen often is, good things came from it, but it'd be like, I'm trying to think about what happened a week and a half ago, and it was really fuzzy, or someone kind of brings it up, and there's this kind of loss of context. And so it made it really hard to experiment, inspect, and adapt. And then kind of the last experience I can think of is kind of my experience now in mob programming, where we basically are, are coached into this virtuous loop where we have extreme ownership over the process. We have dedicated learning time every day, and we retrospect a lot. So most of the time it just happens throughout the day in these little mini retrospectives. And some of you might be able to experience that here in the breakout room shortly. And so we're constantly fine tuning our process as we go. And what's really great about it is everyone remembers what happened 15 minutes ago. So we can say, that was really painful that we have to keep hitting the save button. And this is just something that happened to us the other day. And so we automated the save in our IDE. And so you can really turn up the good quite quickly. And so in my experience, favoring fast feedback applies a lot to continuous improvement. How about people itself, Luis?
This is a fun one. So the workplace is a complex environment just on its own. We have to communicate with quite a lot of people during the day, and then we go through a lot as a result. But when you're not favoring fast feedback in this kind of environment, it can be difficult to get the details on the preferences, the decisions, context, and sometimes even the people involved with who you're working with. So if you go for the faster feedback route, the details can be clear. The environment would be very fresh. Oftentimes the involved people are still around to respond, depending on how fast it is. So it's easier to work with in general.
Nice. So the next one we're going to go to is one, of course, near and dear to my heart, which has to do with feedback on code. So peer review feedback on code from other people. And so I'll be doing kind of like the A versus B as far as feedback goes. And so this first slide is basically one example, which is kind of the very popular and traditional asynchronous code review. And I love this diagram that Dragan Stepanovic created. And of course, peer review, asynchronous code review processes can be better than this, but I like this one because it's pretty illustrative of what my experience was when I was in a process like this. And so if you look at it, let me turn on my laser pointer. From a feedback perspective, so you have, coder one up here, and they start working on a ticket and they believe they're done working on their story, and they ask someone for review. But that person's busy working on something else because they're, off doing their own thing as an individual contributor. And so they're not going to get that feedback in context for what they're working on because they have to wait for them to finish. And so while they're waiting for that feedback, they pick up another ticket, and then eventually they get feedback, but now they're getting feedback when they're working on something else. And it kind of goes back and forth all throughout it. And so you throw in, meetings, stand-ups, refinements, lunches, breaks, end of day, next day, that kind of stuff. And so what it has is a lot of handoffs, wait times, and, kind of things being thrown back and forth. And so in my experience, it's really easy to lose context. The feedback is good, but it's not fast enough and in the flow to really be applicable quickly. And so, so if you compare that with something more like pair programming or mob programming, kind of stemming back to Llewellyn's keynote a little bit earlier with strong style pairing or strong style mob programming, the big difference is you have the people reviewing code with you together. So the feedback on the code is on the fly in that moment. And so, if you really establish great interpersonal interactions where people can share their concerns, share their opinions, and really work out the issues, you can very efficiently incorporate a bunch of feedback from many different perspectives, whether it's front end, back end, DevOps, product, TDD, clean code, and really integrate that into the code right then and there without all that handoffs, waitings, and queues, and those kind of things. And so comparing those two, I believe, in my experience, favoring fast feedback has led to a better developer experience for peer review as well. So we did mention this as a proverb and not a universal rule that will apply in all situations, silver bullet, so to speak. So what are some areas where fast feedback is not good? Like in the picture here, you take the mic and jam it up to the speaker, you're going to get feedback in a very annoying, bad kind of way. And so one thing that comes to mind for me when fast feedback is not good it makes me think of a model for giving interpersonal feedback called SBI. And this is a positive model because it talks about when you give feedback to someone else, you want to state the situation that the event occurred in, the behavior that was done, and then also the impact of that behavior. So SBI, right? And so that provides really rich, actionable feedback. It's also much kinder to give than something that's more name-calling or judgmental. And I think I've seen that feedback be really helpful. But if any of those pieces are missing, so there's no situation, it's just behavior or behavior impact or impact without the behavior that caused the impact, the feedback is not as valuable. And so you can apply that to anything in the developer experience. So logs that don't provide sufficient context about what's going on or the impact, it basically just becomes noise. There's several other examples where it could be fast, but insufficient feedback for that reason. How about your experiences, Luis?
So on a technical level, personal story I have is I was working on SCADA design systems for my previous post here in Hunter. And I developed a system, I helped develop a system for real-time information for injection molding machines. So prior to this, it would take actually it would be a matter of like an hour, maybe 2 hours, in order to get data in from the previous system. So we developed one that gave feedback almost instantaneously, like a matter of seconds than hours. But our operators were stressed out all the time because the injection molding process takes some time for it to settle. So real time for them is actually something around like 15 minutes. So depending on the situation, favoring fast feedback might not be the most useful for kind of the end customer. So some processes just take time to settle.
Right on. And so please like and subscribe. And we love hearing your feedback on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and more. And so until next time, mob well, everyone, and have a good one. Bye.